credit where it's due, when we asked Corrections Chief Executive Ray Smith if he'd show us around Mount Eden Prison, he said yes. Ray, it'd be fair to say, wouldn't it, that the public lost confidence a bit in this operation at Mount Eden as a result of what happened here. So we wanted to come and see for ourselves what it's like now.
Yep.
Thank you very much for agreeing to that. Why did you agree to that request from us? Because journalists haven't been in here before.
No, they haven't. Well, actually, I'm very proud of what we've done here and the effort the staff have put in to change things around. And I think it's very hard looking from the outside in to get a real appreciation of a facility like this.
What you appreciate straight up is a solidness about this place, as you'd expect in a prison as infamous as this. From the receiving office, where every new prisoner is processed, scanned for contraband, and some strip-searched, to the holding cells, where the freshly arrived must nervously assess their place in that day's prison hierarchy. Then up to whichever unit they're assessed as suitable for.
Good morning.
Even this is quite a reminder of where we are, isn't it? I mean, I've never seen a lift with bars.
Sorry. I think what you're picking up all the time is there's security all the way. You know, so every step's quite slow moving through, and then you camera it a lot as well. So obviously people are watching us. There's a big central location where people are watching on many cameras across the estate.
It is, by anyone's measure, an intimidating environment. This is the biggest remand prison in the country, in a country that we learn today now has its biggest prisoner population ever.
Just this week, we ticked over 10,000 people in prison.
Did we, this week?
Yep, that just happened this week.
Gosh.
So that'll bounce around a bit.
Ray Smith has been boss of corrections for 6 years. He's a career public servant, 34 years now, since the age of 17. And he's had tough gigs before. His last job was heading up Child, Youth and Family. And now, he reveals to us, another 2.5 years at this one. His contract has just been extended. Do you like your job?
I do like this job. I mean, it's incredibly challenging at times, but it's it's motivating. And I have wonderful staff. 8,000 people get up every day and come to work in the Department of Corrections, and I feel very proud to lead them. And it gets you past the more difficult bits that come with the job.
Like what?
Well, there've been some hard times across us. We've had a terrible riot, which was a very big and scary event. The things that happened at Mount Eden Prison were not good in anyone's estimation.
No, they weren't, and there are so many aspects of it that still don't make sense, although being here at least gives us the lie of the land. Where did the fight clubs happen? Was this the unit?
Gosh, it happened in a range of units actually.
Right.
Was it this unit?
Yeah, units like these.
Units like these. And what happened here, was not okay.
What I kind of struggle to understand, having just been in the control room, is how they happened. How did those prisoners upload that footage to YouTube?
Well, it's not that hard if you've got a cell phone.
But aren't there cell phone blockers?
Well, it is difficult, but there are lots of ways to get things up to YouTube.
The dates, from my memory, the dates seem to show that the footage was uploaded from inside.
Oh, it could well have been.
Right, it would indicate that the cell phone blockers weren't working.
Well, no system's perfect, and I think with any of these technology systems, sometimes people can break them, and they do. In the scheme of things, they did us a favour.
Right.
Because we found out, and for the first time I had evidence that was happening here, and we were able to step in and sort it out.
The evidence we keep hearing, the video, was the first evidence. But there was evidence of organised fighting, not just at Mount Eden, but elsewhere, as far back as 2009. And remember, an investigation started a year before the Fight Club videos surfaced, but the prison director doesn't get the report till nearly a year later. What I'm really confounded by is that when the prison director was given that report in, I think it was May 2015, he was told not to share it with anybody. Why not?
Well, I think we were always worried about that report in terms of the lack of evidence, if you like. And, looking back in hindsight...
Hang on, when did you know about it, that report?
I first found out about that report just after the YouTube footage went up. And that's when I first read it. And
What do you mean then by we were always worried about that report?
well, I knew about that report at that point in time. What I'm saying to you is that the notion that fighting might be occurring in prison, it's not the first time that had ever been raised. From time to time that would come up, but I had never had a sense that there was any ongoing issue of organised fighting.
The prison director is given a copy of that report in hard copy and told not to share its contents with anybody. And I don't understand why that should be. He's the prison director, he's in control of that prison. Should he not be able to share its contents, that report, with whomever he feels appropriate, including you?
Oh, look, and I agree with you, and I've said that publicly. I think the report should have been shared, it should have been shared much more early, and it should have been escalated, and it wasn't.
You categorically did not receive that report.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
All of your senior managers knew about that report. The National Commissioner, one of your deputy chief executives, the chief custodial officer, and nobody thought to tell you.
I think the report should have been shared, and that the prison director and Serco should have been given that report earlier. And I don't think it was right that that didn't happen. I wish it had been done differently. And look, I'm the chief executive. So when things go wrong in corrections, I take accountability for them. And the way I do that is to be open and honest about them and get on and fix them.
Part of which meant Serco losing the prison and corrections stepping back in here. We're going into one of the toughest parts of Mount Eden. It's a high security isolation unit, though its official name doesn't quite give a sense of what it really is. Okay, this looks like the real deal. What's this?
So we're in the management unit, Paula, and you really don't want to be down here. And small numbers of people will come down here when they've probably assaulted another prisoner, possibly assaulted a staff member, made threats to staff members, or broken the prison rules in a very serious way.
This is quite a reality check, isn't it? The concept that somebody could be here for 23 hours a day.
Yep.
Boy, I can't even imagine what that would do to you. I'm just feeling what that mattress is like. There's not a great deal of comfort in here, is there? I don't know what that would do to you psychologically, being locked in a cell like this for 23 hours a day.
And that's why you don't want to be. You don't want to be down here.
One of the reasons this cell is so bare is to reduce the risk of suicide. Mental health issues are a major concern in prison, affecting 36% of inmates. Last year, there were 11 unnatural deaths in prisons. There have been 30 in the last 5 years, most of them suicides. When you look at those prisoner death figures, 3 of those 11 happened at Mount Eden since corrections took it back over. Whereas when Serco was running Mount Eden, there was only 1 death in all of the years that it was in control of the prison. So actually they had a better record than corrections did there.
The reality is that people do die in prison. They die in all of our prisons, and just as they do in the community. And the saddest thing, so many die of natural causes in prison. And
these are 11 unnatural deaths in jails, 3 of them at Mount Eden.
And some people take their lives, and I think
it's not good enough though, is it? 11 unnatural deaths in corrections-run prisons.
No, actually, people do take their lives in prisons, and they do it worldwide. And it's a very, very sad thing when it happens. But so many of the people that come to prison come with very extreme mental health conditions.
The mental health problems of prisoners raises a whole different story about whether many of them are even in the right place. But given it is corrections which is left to deal with them, is it doing things right? Remember, we've learned of 4 cases where the Ombudsman is investigating the use of tie-down beds. What is your view on the use of tie-down beds?
Well, it's such an extreme use of physical restraint, isn't it? And it's a hard thing to imagine, I think, for most of us. It's used very, very rarely, thankfully, and I think, the reality is sometimes the alternatives are not very clear. So when you have someone that, for example, is constantly or prolifically trying to self-harm, and I mean, there are cases I know about where people tear open their stitches, put their faeces inside their wounds. One person put a paper plate inside of a wound in his throat. Some people dirty their cells by smearing their faeces all across their cell and throwing it at the staff. So occasionally you get to this point where the behaviour is so extreme and often accompanied with violence that I think people aren't left with many alternatives. And they still may not qualify, surprisingly, to head off into a forensic mental health unit.
This rings true with what the Chief Ombudsman said. He's worried about the use of tie-down beds. As you know, there's one case that he's investigating where an inmate was tied down for 16 hours a day for weeks on end.
Yes, and I'm worried about that case too. And
that's what he said to us.
Yeah.
So even though on the one hand I'm kind of hearing from you that you think that there are circumstances where they're justified because there's no alternative, you're also not comfortable with their use.
Oh, look, I feel uneasy about it. It's such an extreme use of physical force. But what you've got to look at against that is if the alternative is the person dies because we can't control their behaviour, it may be that it's the only alternative we have available.
Smith tells us that in the past 3 years there have been 12 inmates who have been restrained on those beds. One of them was Ricky Seller, whose family, remember, we promised we would ask the boss of corrections about what happened to him. So he died in Pāremoremo in November last year. His family has asked me to convey to you that they're desperate for some answers about what happened to him.
Well, it's a very sad situation with Mr. Sellers, and can I just say I'd be very happy to reach out to the family. He was a chap that had spent many years in prison, and from what I can gather, you know, the most part of it in special needs areas. That must have been very, very challenging for the staff along the way.
Do you think that the use of tie-down beds was justified in his circumstance?
Well, it was probably to keep him alive.
Time to move to literally greener pastures. There was a condition to Ray Smith letting us into Mount Eden. It was that he wanted to show us here too, Spring Hill Prison, to give us a more balanced perspective of what the prison estate is like. Which it does, because to all the senses, it's immediately a completely different environment.
Yeah, I mean, you'll recall there was a riot here at the prison, and we're talking about that unit. If you look,
that's the unit.
The unit right at the top there.
Yeah.
And it's sort of hard to imagine on a day like this.
Yes.
When you can see there's quite a bit of activity, and the place feels well structured and organised.
2/3 of prisoners have been here before, so programs like this aim to give them a better chance of getting employment on release, to reduce their chances of coming back. We'll call him Dave. This is his second time in prison. We're not allowed to report, for the sake of his victims, his conviction or sentence. So, we can't talk about how long your sentence is for, but you've been here for a little while, yeah? And you've got a little while to go.
Yep.
While you're here, you're learning a trade, yeah? What are you learning?
Building, T3, level 4 building.
You know, I don't know if you've heard or talked much amongst the other inmates about the reoffending rate. So one of the targets for corrections has been to reduce reoffending.
Yep.
What do you think? Has this time that you've spent in prison changed your feelings about the crimes that you've done in the past?
Yeah, definitely, just for my family. Yeah, and just don't want to really come back.
What do you mean for your family?
Well, they're pretty much missing out on me being there.
Have you got kids?
Yep, 2 kids. Yep, and I've got a partner.
Yeah. So you're planning not to come back?
No.
Till release date, his home is a cell like this. Anyone who thinks that prison life is hotel life is wrong, aren't they?
No, this is no holiday camp. Absolutely not, because you've got to remember a lot of hours are spent locked in here, and often with somebody else.
I've been talking to an ex-inmate from here actually, and he talked specifically about this, about double bunking at Spring Hill, and how his belief is that one of the causes of prison violence is overcrowding, and that double bunking is a reason for that. What do you think?
I mean, there was some research done on it very early on after the double bunking numbers increased, and it didn't find that at all, actually. It found that for some people, actually having a roommate's good. For others, it's not their cup of tea. It's not new. We always had double bunking, so it's not a new thing. We just increased the percentage of it from about 20 to up to about 30%.
And there's about to be more in NAFA?
Yes, there will be, yep.
The extra beds, the extra double bunking, roommates as Smith euphemistically calls it, the growing prison muster, the failure to achieve that target of reducing reoffending by 25%. It is all connected.
Have we achieved 25%? No.
Nowhere near.
But have you got an organisation that I don't think you had 6 years ago, where people get up in the morning, come to work and say, yep, I'm going to do something different? Yeah, I think you do. And, you know, what sort of chief executive would I be if I didn't set this place the highest goals possible? I mean, don't we all want to see that kind of level of reduction in reoffending?
Yes, except
no, I couldn't
hasn't been met.
I couldn't do it in 5 or 6 years.
Can you do it in a longer time period?
Yeah, I think we can.
Back at Mount Eden, there's another building project going on. This one is a joint exercise with the police, bringing their holding cells onto prison land. There's also the $300 million redevelopment at Paremoremo, and the extra billion for 1,800 new beds. It's a fortune. We're spending a fortune, aren't we, on building prisons?
Yeah. The reality is prison infrastructure is very, very expensive. It's probably like building a hospital or something. You know, you've been in it, you've seen it. It's full of concrete. It's full of security for all of the right reasons. And so, yes, it's a very expensive investment that we have to make.
Or do we have to make it? Now that the muster has just ticked over to 10,000, the question is, do we just keep on building more and more prisons and keep on spending the $100K a year it costs to keep the inmates there? Next episode, is there a better way?